It was supposed to be a light-hearted morning chat, an elegant conversation with one of Hollywood's most respected legends. Sir Anthony Hopkins, the man whose calm presence and piercing intellect have made him an icon, appeared on Lorraine to discuss his latest film and his reflections on aging, art, and legacy. But what began as a polite exchange quickly turned into one of the most uncomfortable live TV moments in recent memory. The tension started subtly. Lorraine Kelly, always known for her friendly but probing questions, asked Hopkins about his famously private relationship with his estranged daughter. "Sir Anthony," she began softly, "you've spoken in the past about reconciliation and forgiveness. Have you reached out to your daughter recently?" Hopkins paused, his sharp blue eyes locking onto the camera before glancing back at Lorraine. "I don't talk about that," he said firmly. The studio fell silent for a moment. Lorraine, trying to ease the awkwardness, added, "Of course, I understand. But many of your fans admire how open you've been about your personal growth." "That's not personal growth," Hopkins interrupted, his voice suddenly cold and cutting. "That's private pain, Ms. Kelly. There's a difference." Viewers watching at home could sense the shift. Lorraine tried to move on, offering a nervous laugh and a quick change of subject to his film. But Hopkins didn't seem interested in the new topic either. When she brought up his role as a reclusive composer haunted by his past, he replied sharply, "You know, Lorraine, people seem to love digging into other people's ghosts. Perhaps you should interview yourself next." The comment drew gasps from the audience. Lorraine blinked, visibly taken aback but maintained her composure. "Sir Anthony, we're live," she said with a strained smile. "I think people just want to understand the man behind the legend." Hopkins leaned forward. "The man behind the legend," he repeated mockingly. "That's the problem, isn't it? You want the pain, the scandal, the tears, not the art." By now, producers were whispering frantically through Lorraine's earpiece. Cameras briefly cut to wide shots to mask the growing tension. But it was too late, the exchange had already spiraled out of control. Lorraine tried to regain control by turning to a lighter question. "Well, maybe let's talk about your new project. It's been described as one of your most emotional performances to date." "Emotional?" Hopkins snapped. "Everything is emotional, Lorraine. Life, death, love, loss, that's acting. But television," he gestured toward the cameras, "this isn't emotion. This is theater for gossip." The audience went dead silent. Lorraine forced a tight smile and said, "I think we might need to take a short break." But Hopkins wasn't done. Before the break cue even rolled, he said quietly but clearly, "You invited me here to sell something, not to feel something. Maybe next time, be honest about what you really want." Lorraine's polite demeanor cracked for a moment. "Sir Anthony," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "we're here to celebrate your work. I'm sorry if you've taken offense, but I don't think anyone deserves to be spoken to like that." Hopkins stood up slowly, adjusting his jacket. "Then perhaps you should invite someone less honest," he said, before stepping off the stage. The camera caught Lorraine's stunned expression as she turned to face the audience. "Well," she said weakly, "we'll be right back after the break." The clip immediately went viral. Twitter exploded with mixed reactions, some defending Hopkins for setting boundaries, others accusing him of arrogance and disrespect. Within hours, headlines screamed, "Anthony Hopkins walks off Lorraine Kelly's show after on-air clash." Behind the scenes, production sources claimed the tension had been brewing even before the cameras started rolling. Hopkins reportedly appeared irritated during the pre-interview, refusing to discuss certain topics and asking to cut short the appearance. One crew member later told a reporter, "You could tell he didn't want to be there. He was polite at first, but something about the tone of the questions flipped a switch." For Lorraine Kelly, a seasoned host with decades of experience handling celebrities, it was perhaps one of her most difficult interviews ever. In a brief statement later that afternoon, ITV said, "We respect Sir Anthony Hopkins' right to privacy. Live television can be unpredictable, and sometimes emotions run high." But social media had already drawn its own conclusions. Some fans praised Hopkins for refusing to let the media exploit his personal life. Others accused him of being unnecessarily cruel toward a journalist simply doing her job. As the dust settled, one thing was certain: what was meant to be a calm, reflective interview had turned into a defining TV moment, one that neither Lorraine Kelly nor Sir Anthony Hopkins would forget anytime soon. The morning after the shocking incident, social media and news outlets across the UK were still buzzing. Clips from the interview were replayed endlessly, each frame analyzed, each word dissected. Was Anthony Hopkins out of line? Did Lorraine Kelly push too far? Everyone had an opinion, and everyone wanted answers. By noon, Hopkins' representatives released a short but pointed statement. Greater than, Sir Anthony Hopkins has always maintained his right to privacy regarding his family and personal life. He regrets that a conversation intended to discuss art and film was steered toward deeply personal topics. He wishes Ms. Kelly and her team the best. The tone was calm and composed, classic Hopkins. But insiders suggested it was far from over. According to one ITV staff member, Lorraine was visibly upset after the broadcast. She kept asking what went wrong, the insider revealed. She's used to tough interviews, but this one really shook her. She felt he was unnecessarily harsh. Later that day, Lorraine opened her show with a measured response. Sitting alone on her pastel-lit set, she addressed the elephant in the room. Yesterday's interview with Sir Anthony Hopkins didn't go as planned, she began softly. Live television can be unpredictable, and emotions can sometimes take us by surprise. I have the utmost respect for him and his work, and I hope he knows that. Her words were diplomatic, professional even, but her expression betrayed something deeper, genuine hurt. Viewers sympathized, flooding her social media with messages of support. You handled it with grace, one comment read. He was out of order, said another. Meanwhile, Hopkins remained silent, until a few days later. During a quiet radio appearance in Wales, he finally spoke about the incident. The host, clearly cautious, asked if he regretted how he handled the situation. Hopkins sighed, his tone much softer than during the Lorraine interview. I don't regret speaking honestly, he said. But perhaps I regret speaking with anger. I've spent my life learning that fame can take everything from you, including peace. I'm not angry at Lorraine. I'm tired of being treated like a story instead of a man. The interviewer went quiet for a moment before saying, You sound lonely. Hopkins gave a faint chuckle. Loneliness is part of being alive, isn't it? You play your roles, give your heart to strangers through a screen, and then everyone wants to peek behind the curtain. But there's not much back there, just a man, growing old, trying to understand himself. That radio moment softened public opinion. Suddenly, the narrative began to shift. Viewers who once criticized him started to see the humanity behind his frustration. Many began sharing quotes from that interview with empathy. He's 87 years old, let him have peace. He's not rude, he's just tired of the circus. Lorraine, for her part, refused to fan the flames. A week later, she was asked by a journalist whether she'd ever have Hopkins back on her show. She smiled kindly and said, If he ever wants to talk again, about anything, my sofa is always open. Behind the scenes, ITV quietly edited the full segment for their online archives, removing some of the harsher exchanges. But the damage, or perhaps the impact, was already done. The clash had sparked a national conversation about privacy, respect, and the emotional toll fame can take on aging artists. Film critics even began revisiting Hopkins' work, connecting his raw emotions on Lorraine to his most recent performances. What you saw that day wasn't arrogance, one columnist wrote, it was vulnerability disguised as anger, the same emotion that makes his acting so powerful. In the weeks that followed, Hopkins retreated from the public eye. He spent time painting in his Malibu home, posting occasional videos of his cat, Niblo, and soft piano tunes. The man who once stunned audiences as Hannibal Lecter now seemed to be rediscovering peace in solitude. And Lorraine, she moved on gracefully, as she always does. Yet, whenever fans mention that infamous interview, she simply says with a knowing smile, it was real, and real moments are what live TV is all about. In the end, what could have been a PR disaster became something strangely human, a reminder that even legends, even beloved hosts, are only people trying to connect in a world that never stops watching.